right? Things go hypersonic, little sideways with China, Taiwan, whatever. Our aircraft carriers are no longer the point of the spear. They're vulnerable.
When Dirty Jobs first aired in 2003, few could have imagined how deeply it would change the way America viewed work. What started as a quirky experiment on the Discovery Channel quickly evolved into something profound. A raw, unfiltered portrait of the men and women who kept the nation running, one filthy, back-breaking task at a time. Mike Rowe, with his easy charm and everyman wit, became the bridge between America's living rooms and its forgotten workforce. He wasn't there to mock them or glorify them, he was there to understand them. Whether he was knee-deep in sludge or face-to-face with a swarm of bees, Rowe brought humor to hardship, turning grime into grace. But what the audience didn't see was that behind the laughs and one-liners, there was a toll, a physical and emotional cost that grew heavier with every season. Each episode looked spontaneous and adventurous, but the reality was far from glamorous. The Dirty Jobs team faced environments that most safety inspectors would have called off-limits. Toxic fumes, collapsing tunnels, unpredictable machinery. These were not television sets. They were active work sites, where accidents happened without warning. The crew often filmed in confined spaces where a spark or misstep could mean catastrophe. Rowe, though known for his calm demeanor, came close to serious injury multiple times. In one infamous moment, while filming at a wastewater facility, he slipped into a vat of sludge so dense it nearly pulled him under before the crew could haul him out. Another time, a pressurized valve exploded near the camera, sending shards of metal flying inches from where he stood. Despite these dangers, Rowe never flinched on camera. He believed that if the workers could endure those conditions daily, he could at least survive them for a few hours. But behind the camera, exhaustion, fear, and anxiety grew with every shoot. Crew members developed rashes, respiratory issues, and even mild chemical burns. There were days when the heat was so intense that sound technicians fainted beside roaring machinery, or when a lighting assistant nearly fell to his death trying to capture the perfect shot. The laughter audiences heard often came from adrenaline and relief. It was the sound of people surviving another day on set. What made Dirty Jobs extraordinary was its humanity. Each episode gave a name and face to the invisible backbone of society, the workers who built, cleaned, and repaired everything others took for granted. But for those workers, television exposure didn't change their lives. Many of them went back to the same dangerous jobs, earning the same modest pay. Some even faced repercussions for being on the show. Management at certain companies resented the exposure, while others faced scrutiny from regulators after their working conditions aired on national TV. A few workers became local celebrities, but that fame faded fast. One crab fisherman who appeared in an early episode died months later when his boat capsized. A coal miner featured in another episode developed a terminal lung illness not long after filming. The show brought awareness, yes, but awareness didn't pay hospital bills or replace lost lives. Mike Rowe later admitted that he often felt conflicted. He was proud to showcase their resilience, but haunted by the fact that so many of their stories ended in struggle or tragedy. Some of the workers told him they were proud to finally be seen. Others confessed that it reminded them of everything they'd lost: friends, health, time. For Mike Rowe, the emotional toll became harder to ignore. To audiences, he was the unshakable host who could laugh through sewage and dead animals, but away from the spotlight, the constant exposure to pain and hardship began to wear him down. He traveled relentlessly for nearly 10 years, barely sleeping, always surrounded by danger and suffering. He met men who had given up dreams for survival, women who worked night shifts to keep families afloat, and entire communities hanging by a thread. Those stories stayed with him. He began questioning the very idea of success in America. Was it about wealth, or was it about endurance? He admired these people, yet their lives were often marked by injury, poverty, and anonymity. Rowe himself began to suffer from burnout, insomnia, and bouts of depression. He described that time as a period of quiet collapse, where the line between admiration and exploitation blurred. He wondered whether he was truly honoring these workers or simply profiting from their pain. The man who once found joy in getting dirty now found himself weighed down by the responsibility of telling other people's truths. The production crew shared in that silent suffering. Unlike the workers they filmed, they weren't trained for danger, yet they faced it daily. Camera operators held their breath while standing over vats of acid. Sound technicians crawled through cramped tunnels, choking on fumes to capture dialogue. Producers waded through knee-deep waste just to adjust lighting. The toll was physical and psychological. Many developed chronic back pain, repetitive strain injuries, and respiratory issues from years of exposure. But the worst damage was emotional. After seeing so much hardship, some crew members reported nightmares and anxiety long after the show ended. A few left television altogether, unable to endure another day in those conditions. Others stayed, believing the show's mission to celebrate the dignity of labor was worth every scar. Mike Rowe often praised them publicly, calling them the bravest people I know. But privately, he felt guilty for the danger they faced under his leadership. As the seasons rolled on, tragedy began to shadow the production. The same risks that made the show authentic began taking real lives. Crew members fell ill, some fatally. Workers who had once laughed beside Rowe were suddenly gone, killed in accidents, succumbing to long-term exposure, or worn down by the very jobs they'd proudly showcased. Rowe attended funerals, sent letters, and posted tributes online, but the grief was relentless. One cameraman who had filmed hundreds of segments died after years of lung problems believed to have been worsened by toxic filming locations. Another crew member was killed in a workplace accident not long after leaving the show. And then there were the workers, faces familiar to millions, whose deaths hit Rowe the hardest. One man died on the job mere months after filming his segment. Rowe said that moment stopped him cold, forcing him to confront how fragile life on the front lines truly was. By 2012, dirty jobs had become a cultural phenomenon, but behind the success, it was falling apart. The production costs were skyrocketing due to insurance, medical expenses, and safety precautions. The emotional burden on the crew was unsustainable. Discovery Channel announced the show's cancellation quietly, calling it a creative decision. But insiders knew the truth. The show had simply become too dangerous to continue. For Rowe, the end felt like a funeral. There was no grand finale, no farewell tour, just silence. The crew disbanded, scattered into new projects, each carrying memories of what they'd endured together. Rowe tried to stay optimistic, reminding them that they'd done something meaningful, something that mattered. But privately, he felt hollow. Watching reruns became impossible. It felt like reliving ghosts. After the cancellation, Rowe retreated from public life. He needed to rest, to breathe, to rediscover who he was beyond the mud and sweat. Yet even in silence, the mission of Dirty Jobs stayed with him. He couldn't forget the faces, the laughter, or the pain. He knew those stories couldn't die, so he channeled his grief into purpose. In 2008, he had quietly founded the Mike Rowe Works Foundation. But after the show ended, It became his central focus. The foundation funded scholarships for trade schools, helped veterans find skilled labor jobs, and campaigned to restore respect for the working class. It was his way of giving back to the people who had trusted him with their stories. Through speaking engagements and online advocacy, he continued to fight for what Dirty Jobs stood for, the belief that every kind of work has value. But even as he built this legacy, the memories of tragedy never left him. He once admitted that certain faces still haunted his dreams: the cameraman who died, the worker who didn't live to see his episode air, the countless people whose bodies bore the cost of keeping the country running. A decade later, Dirty Jobs remains more than a show. It's a mirror reflecting America's hidden backbone. It stripped away glamour and reminded the world that civilization rests on the shoulders of people who get their hands dirty. Yet it also revealed a painful truth. Those who do the hardest work often pay the highest price. The laughter, the camaraderie, the grit, they were real. But so were the injuries, the funerals, and the broken hearts. For Mike Rowe, that duality defines the show's legacy. It celebrated human resilience, but it also exposed the fragility beneath it. When he looks back now, he doesn't just remember the humor or the stench. He remembers the people, the courage, and the sacrifice. The dirt washed off. The stories remained. In interviews today, when Rowe is asked if he'd ever bring Dirty Jobs back, his answer is gentle but firm. He's proud of what it stood for, but he knows the cost it carried. He calls it the most meaningful thing I've ever done, and the hardest to survive. The show taught him, and millions of viewers, that dignity isn't defined by status or salary. It's defined by effort, pride, and perseverance. Those who toil unseen, who brave danger for the sake of others, it's in the hands of the people willing to do its